ladies, to the No Bad Day Show, Simple Wellness for Women. I'm Jolene Fisher, your host, and every episode of the No Bad Day Show will give you a view into the life of another woman, and she will share her story, triumphs, struggles, and all the lessons that she's learned along that path. And my goal as your host is to bring topics to you that are relevant and encouraging, because I want you to be inspired by our stories, but be the hero of your own story. And this is why I introduce you to brave women who do hard things and get really the meaning out of the No Bad Days motto and that perspective that we're going to hear today. And today we're talking to Catherine Reynolds. She's currently in the role of Life Enrichment Director for Daybreak Youth Services. And she coordinates life enrichment activities for girls ages 12 to 18 who are currently in treatment for substance abuse or mental illness. And she has a lot of experience with this, which she'll tell you her story here in a little bit. But she also serves on 2 boards for nonprofits, for the Spokane Humane Society, as well as the Royal Closet, which I'd like you to explain a little bit at the end as well. Fun. Yeah, those are fun. She is currently an empty nester. Her and her husband have 2 kids in college, which you'll hear that whole story as well. And she certainly keeps herself busy, because I was looking at this page, my community involvement. Look at all those nonprofits that she's involved with. I'm like, wow. So if you need somebody to be a master connector or know somebody, this is the gal. Catherine knows everybody. And I got the pleasure of meeting her. I know how we met. We met in line at a bikini competition.
We did. We competed against each other. Yes, well, I was in an older age group.
Yeah, my last bikini competition was when I turned 40.
And that was my first, and I was 50.
And you were 50. And she was standing in front of me in line. And she's like, hey, I think I know you from Facebook or something. And anyway,
friends.
Yeah, some mutual friends.
And then now I met Kieran through this too, and she was your last guest. And
yes. So many cool connections, and you definitely are the master connector, though.
Well, that's been fun. And then Allison with the Build You Girl Gang, and you and Kelsey doing the fun flip flop lemon drop party, and Roderick's been great with coming to Daybreak to speak to the girls, and outpatient. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I am so excited to have you here to share your story about your daughter and the struggles that you went through, and now on that other side. As parents, we really, if you're a parent watching today, it is one of our biggest fears, right? That
absolutely
our children will have some sort of addiction or mental illness that we have to work through with them. And I'm curious to go into that story. But first, give us a little bit of background into maybe your education and where you're from, so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm from Texas, and I went to Baylor, so Sick'em Bears. They're doing great right now, obviously, but proud Baylor mom and Mama Bear, no pun intended. But I met my husband at Baylor, and he's a physician here in Spokane, and we moved to DC, and he did his fellowship and internship in Seattle. We fell in love with the Northwest, and have been in Seattle, in Northwest and Spokane for 30 years now. So I'm actually more of a Washingtonian than a Texan now. So the majority of my life has now been in the state of Washington versus Texas. So it's bittersweet. But I graduated with a degree in journalism, and did the stay-at-home mom stint for a while, and I've worked several different jobs, and have had some fun little businesses. I had a little Kumon Center for a while, and I ran a tumble bus, which is a whole nother funny story.
I don't even know what that is. What is a tumble bus?
Tumble bus? Yeah. I taught gymnastics classes to kids under age 5. I converted a 40-foot school bus.
Wow.
Painted it bright red. I drove it around Seattle, had a couple of little fender benders, and driving this bus. No kids were in it. I would pull up to preschools and daycares, and the kids would come out, and I would do gymnastics lessons on the bus.
Oh, fun.
Isn't that fun? Goodness. I did birthday parties for a bunch of the Mariners, and anyway, it was a fun time. And Valerie was like 3, 4, and 5. I did it for like 3 or 4 years, and so she would get to ride on the bus with me, and it was really a lot of fun. So yeah, so
And you also competed in a recent pageant. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. I know. I feel like if you don't keep reinventing yourself or stay busy and positive and just finding something different, I like to experience life. I really do. So I did. I competed in the Mrs. Washington pageant, and so that was fun. My title was Mrs. Lilac City, and that's where I met Kieran Reynolds, who won the title of Miss Spokane. There's a Miss Spokane for the unmarried ladies and a Mrs. Washington for, the title Miss, she won Miss Washington and she was Miss Spokane. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so my title was Mrs. Lilac City, and I competed for the title of Mrs. Washington. But it was fun. It was
Catherine's trying to rope me into doing it.
I want Celine to do it. She would have fun. So Kieran and I are team tagging her.
I know I'd have fun.
And who knows, maybe, and doing the bikini thing was the fun thing too, just to say I did it. I mean, you just set goals and you do it, and then you move on, find something different. But I'm pretty settled. This saving the animals and saving these young lives has kept me busy.
Yeah. And in the midst of that, you're doing hard things yourself. I mean, you're working in those avenues and volunteering, and you have a job as a life enrichment director for Daybreak Services. So tell us, what was the precipice that got you into what you're doing now with Daybreak, and take us back to the story of
what all happened.
Yeah.
So back to like moving from Baylor with the journalism degree. My degree was obsolete the day I graduated. 85, the computers were everywhere. I think computers were mainstream in 1985. I'm sorry. I graduated 88. 84, I graduated high school. So yeah, computers were, so as a journalism major, my degree was basically obsolete the day I graduated. So I barely know how to turn on a computer. And so fast forward, so we're up in DC, my husband's in med school, I have to go back to school, and I thought, I want to be a teacher. I'll use the journalism degree and teach. I've always liked kids. And so I went back to school to be a teacher. And so I taught in DC, and then I taught in the inner city school in Washington, DC, and then I taught in Seattle, and then moved to Spokane. And that's whenever I stayed at home and had the Kumon Center. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to teaching one day. And I didn't really enjoy the classroom later, like once you have, kids, and then I had a baby, and it was just like, And then when my daughter started having some issues, and I'll get more into that, I wanted to go back to school to understand. I thought, well, maybe I can be a counselor, because I kind of felt like she didn't get the counseling that she needed. I felt she kind of fell through the cracks. And, as a parent, you can't always be the best counselor to your own child. And you want someone else to tell them and to tell yourself that you're doing the right thing. So I wanted to understand addiction, and I wanted to kind of hibernate from people at that point in my life. And going back to school was basically almost an escape. And, I could decline activities. I've got to study. I'm sorry, I can't go out. So I literally lost contact, lost touch. I hibernated for it took me 3 years. I went back to school, just like 2 classes a semester, because I just did it slowly. And because I was working on myself, and I was still trying to, find my daughter and just see her through the other side of this. So yeah, it took me 3 years to go back to get a little certificate that could have been done in 1 year full time. So that was a rough go. So I went back to SFCC, the Falls, and got a certificate in addiction studies for counseling. And I did my internship at Baylor, thinking at Daybreak, thinking I wanted to be a counselor for addiction studies. And once I started hearing all these girls' stories, I wasn't quite ready, because I was still in the throes of it with my own daughter. And it was, I seriously had like PTSD. Like every time I would hear another girl's story, I was just like, I can't do this. I just can't do this right now. And the position opened up for the life enrichment. And that way suited my needs. So it's been a win-win. Like, I feel like I'm in a great place. And I'm thankfully in a great place with my daughter right now. So, I mean, there is the redemption, but it was a long road. And I truly feel for those that, are going through something right now with their own children.
Right.
It's prevalent.
I mean, praise God that you are able to have an amazing relationship with your daughter now.
Yeah.
But take us back to that time when things started to go the other direction. And how old was she? And where were you guys kind of at in your lives at that point?
I know. It's weird because, when you asked me to do this interview, I was thinking, well, gosh, I mean, obviously everyone's story is different. And, my story with my daughter, there are similarities, and I know like parents that are, or anyone who's listening, if they are like, gosh, what are the warning signs? I mean, you can go online and look at the warning signs, and in the back of your mind, you think, well, yeah, no. I mean, and you can always make excuses, and you can always, play devil's advocate, like, well, just come up with other reasons, like they don't quite fall in this category, but basically go with your gut feeling. And I'm nervous, Julie.
Oh, that's okay.
It's hard. I haven't really shared the story, so go back.
Thank you for being here sharing it, because it is hard to tell.
It's hard,
and you've been through a lot of counseling too to help yourself through that, and I'd love for you to share about that as well, and your journey as a part of this, because a lot of the women that are watching today are women in their 30s, 40s, and up who have children and or have struggled with addiction themselves, maybe even depression and mental illness, and how to really work our way through that as women who, some of us have privilege, some of us don't. And it doesn't matter. We could all fall victim to any of those things that we're going to talk about today. And
thank you for
and as parents who raise our children in homes where we think they have a pretty good life, it's hard for us to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And your daughter was a professional snowboarder.
Yep.
And she grew up in that need to succeed, that
the thrill seeking, the gratification, and the identity of so if we're going to just talk about like her story, my story, Valerie, very bright kid, great grades, she's a great kid. I mean, well, she's a young woman now. She actually turns 29 in February, so she's approaching 30, and she's actually, I do have to say this, so this is amazing. She's in her third year of veterinary school, so she's actually going to be a doctor. So I'm so proud to say that, and I feel very fortunate because 8 years ago, I didn't speak to her for 2 years. We lost contact with her for 2 years, and we didn't know she was dead in a ditch. I mean, it was the most.
Imagine.
It's hard to believe now, but in that time, like when you asked me, like, what did I do? That's whenever I said I just went back to school and I sought help myself, because I bit off all my fingernails. I couldn't get out of bed. I seriously you just don't know. I mean, I'm like checking online, like missing persons. I mean, I really, we didn't know. We had to do the tough love. And I can tell like what brought me to that, because I know a lot of parents like, I would never give up on my child. Like, how do you lose touch with your child? She chose that, and I didn't have a phone number, how to reach her. I mean, if you're blocked from Facebook, and you don't have any contact with her friends. I mean, she was in Colorado. We were here in Washington. There was really no contact, and her boyfriend at the time made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with us, and I just had to curl up in bed and cry and pray, and finally my husband was like, "You've got to do something. You're my happy person." And this is really, and it was affecting the family. It was affecting my son James, who at the time there was an 8-year separation, and he didn't understand, and it was.
He was about 10 to 15 years old, around
Yep.
those ages,
Yep.
between that time frame.
Between those are some growing ages. And so for 2 years, it was, he saw mom crying all the time, and trying to make me feel better. And it was traumatic on him. It was traumatic on my husband. It's, addiction and bad choices it's the whole family. It affects the whole family. And then you want to try to hide it from your parents, the grandparents. Like, well, how's that? How are the kids? Oh, they're great. Everything's good. And you try to put on that good front, and then even like, I don't need to go see anyone. I'm okay. I'm the happy person. And it got to be like, maybe I need to talk to someone, because I can't even, I couldn't function. And so I needed something to think about. So it's like, I want to understand addiction. So that's what took me back to SFCC. Like, well, I'll just take some classes in addiction studies to try to understand, what she's going through, and to find.
Well, I think one of the amazing things about your story, Catherine, is that there's a lot of women listening who are in the state of depression right now, or anxiety ridden, and maybe they feel like they don't know what the next step is for them either. What was it that, or maybe it was your husband saying, I need my happy person back.
Yep.
We all need those type of people in our lives, right? Good friend, a husband, a wife, or whoever, to say, hey, find your happy again. And what did that look like for you? It was, find your happy again. Was it counseling?
Going back to school and counseling. Okay. I reached out to a couple of friends, and I retreated because I felt like all of my friends' kids were doing well, and it was like my child was the only one that wasn't doing that well. And well, I sought Al-Anon as well. I went to a couple of Al-Anon meetings, and I actually met a group. Oh, this one is actually kind of cool. So it shows you good things do come out of things. So I would leave the Al-Anon meetings actually more depressed. Like, well, that wasn't enlightening. Like, everyone was complaining about, the trouble and that their children had caused, and just like what they put the emotional turmoil that they put their family through. And there was one woman that was able to relate to me, and she's a good friend to this day. Her son was going through the same issues, and she said, I feel like we're missing, Jesus in this. There's not the true higher power, even though whatever that may be. And she and I and some other moms got together, and we started the group PTA, Parenting Through Addiction.
I love it.
And we partnered with Whitworth.
Okay.
And they are actually taking over this whole program, and it's going to be like a self-guided, based out of churches.
Okay. For
parents, like a guide, more just to help. But so that's a separate story. That's a whole other fun thing that evolved out of. So I sought counseling through a Christian counselor, and he was the one that advised me. He said, you need to just let go, let God, basically, and you've done everything you can. She's an adult. Let's just work on you. And that was helpful. He said, what's something that interests you? Can you find all the stuff that we know, you know the right things to do, but you almost need someone else to tell you.
Right.
Just like, my daughter, I felt like, she needed someone else other than her mom or her dad telling her what to do, because she rebelled and went down the wrong path, made the wrong choices, hung out with the wrong people, and it just perpetuated. And I think, everything's different. I think there's so many layers. I want to say she was a thrill seeker and just an athlete, put a lot of expectations on herself, and these parents should put expectations on your children as well. You want them to succeed. You want them to do well academically, being a prized athlete. And, I just think it was just everything, just the outside forces. Depression set in with her with so many injuries. She wasn't able to, reach her performance as she thought. And marijuana is a gateway drug, hands down. That's why you shouldn't use it till you're 25, when your brain is formed. But 21, it's even better. And the studies show addiction, the longer you wait to drink, smoke, do anything, the least likelihood you have of it becoming an addiction. So the longer you can wait, the better. So that was, she was a snowboarder hanging out in the terrain park back in the day when it was the culture. You know, everyone was smoking weed and they'd go and jump, 50-foot gaps, and then next thing you know, she's, another concussion, a broken bone. She had 18 broken bones by the time she was 16.
Wow. So her body hurt too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what was so marijuana was a gateway for her at that time?
At the time.
And alcohol after she went to college?
Yeah.
Or
alcohol after college, yeah. And so that was the other hard thing with her being in the state of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Like you couldn't parent from afar.
Right.
And she was fortunate that at the age of 16, she was on the junior Olympic team. And so she moved to Colorado with a host family. And that's whenever, so her junior and senior year, she finished in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And she went to CU Boulder as a freshman. And that's when the trouble really started happening. But I didn't realize it at the time because she still had good grades. So, you think everything's great, and she ended up getting kicked out of school because she had 3 minor possessions. It's basically a 3 strikes and you're out. So she had 3 strikes and you're out. We didn't know any of this until she's out. So she had to call and tell us that she's been kicked out of school. Mm-hmm. And she came home. We tried the counseling, family counseling, and with her just over the summer. And the counselor told us she's not ready to go back to school. Should have listened to her. Mm-hmm. But, you want to leave your child, like, I need to go back to school. I'm going to go back to school. And we let her go back. It's a mistake. But she wouldn't be the person she is if she didn't, do all of these trials and tribulations. I have to just keep coming back to that. Like, well, it's made her stronger. And now, looking back, now she's very appreciative for everything. And she's extremely apologetic. It took her to age 25 for her to say, wow, I was a little shit. You were.
Wow. Oh my goodness. You've already told me the story, but I want the listeners to hear part of this, is that she went to CU Boulder and got kicked out of school. That's when you found out why she got kicked out.
Yep.
And when did the rehab happen? Where is that in the story?
Okay. Yeah. So, if anyone wants any gory details, they can call me and I can tell them some other stories. So if you want to hear some, amazing stories, then feel free to reach out to me privately. So she was kicked out, and we begged her to, after we sent her back as a sophomore against the counselor's judgment. But she was arrested, and basically, this is every parent's nightmare. She was ashamed, so much so that she didn't want us to know. She tried to hide everything. She sold her car to pay for a lawyer to try to get it reduced, the sentence reduced, and hoping we wouldn't find out. So we found out, and it wasn't pretty. We're like, as a normal parent, we now looking back, it was like, maybe I should have approached that differently with a lot more sympathy and understanding and try to understand. But it's just like, you sold your car, what? But we got involved, and that was basically an ultimatum to go to rehab, or you're totally cut off. Mm-hmm. So she went to rehab in the state of California. So she was already 19. So you have to self-admit at age 19. So I remember taking her down there. She wasn't happy about it at all. Didn't believe she had a problem. And, and I don't know if she obviously had a problem, And the intake counselor said, so what's your drug of choice? And I'm right there too. And she's like going, your mom can leave the room if you'd rather her leave the room. And she was like, I don't care. She's like going, everything. She's like going, I don't really have a drug of choice. So they're like, what do you mean? Like, so how many times what have you done? And it was, I just remember just sitting there just in shock, wanting to cry. It was almost like she wanted me to know, like she wanted to hurt me. And I think, and I wanted her, it's a tough time. There was a lot of struggle, mother-daughter issues. And she was like, you know, cocaine, LSD, you know, and they were asking like, so how many times did you do LSD? She's like, probably 100. Yeah. No, that was my reaction too.
I'm sure it was way worse than that. But in the counselor's office.
In the counselor's office. And they're just taking all this down, not flinching. You know, they've learned like just how to just write everything down and intake and you know, they asked, you know, like needles, heroin. She's like, you know, thank God, you know, I bet that was next. You know, and Sarah, who you're interviewing in 2 more weeks, she will tell her journey of heroin addiction. And that's the hardest one to overcome. And even the counselor there was just like, you're lucky, you know, because that is the opioids and heroin. And thank God she was not addicted to the opioids. With all of her pain meds, she would have thought that would have been an easy one to fall onto. But what got her in trouble is she was selling all of her pain meds.
Okay.
So she was basically the dealer, and that's how she got arrested. So she was not addicted to those, but the counselor that was doing her intake said, so it sounds like you're saying you're not addicted to anything, but it looks like you're addicted to poor choices. And that really resonated with me, and I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right. She's addicted to poor choices. Let's fix her.
Right, and then you're happy that she's there because you're like, she's going to be fixed.
Yep.
In a 90-day period of time. And so tell us what happened after that 90 days.
Yep. And this was an education for me too. So as a parent, you think, oh yay, rehab, she's fixed. I'm going to go back 90 days. We did the parent weekend, and picked her up. Life is good, and and not to. I mean, there's pros and cons to rehabs. I mean, obviously I work in one now, and I see, the girls coming back, and like if you are not familiar with that and rehab and addiction, I thought it was like a one time, like one and done. She's going to be fixed. Everything, life is going to be good. So after 90 days, she gets into CSU in Fort Collins. So she got picked out of CU Boulder. So she got accepted to another school in Colorado, and she was still with her boyfriend, and I'll just call him the bad news boyfriend. Of course, it's easy for a mom to place blame whenever it's obviously 2 peas in a pod, and I'm sure that his parents were like, oh, if only he'd met a nice girl. We're like, he's the bad news boyfriend. But so I pick her up in California. We go back to Colorado, all excited, signed a lease on an apartment. It's a freshman start. She got in. She's going back to college. She should be a junior, but she's actually a sophomore since we pulled her out to go to rehab her spring of her sophomore year. So she's basically a sophomore. And all excited. She had her new little roommate, signed a lease on an apartment, furniture's being delivered the next day, and she wants to go out with her friends, and her boyfriend is there too. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to clean the apartment, get all settled. She comes home intoxicated. I break down. Mm-hmm. And so it's a long time ago, and and I call my husband. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And it just set me back. Here you think, and now hindsight, like Valerie and I's never had like those deep conversations. Like, I just like, we're fixed. Everything's good. Everything's got to look good on the surface. You're going back to school, and this is all good. And relapse the very first night, like in front of me.
Right.
She
Not even trying to hide it.
I was trying to hide it. And I was like, were you drinking tonight after 90 days of sobriety and rehab? And my husband's like, get on a plane tomorrow. Tell Valerie she's coming home. She's not going to school. She's not ready. Bring her home. And I said, we're going home tomorrow, Val. I'm changing our flights. You're coming home with me. We're buying you a one-way ticket. She was like, I'm not going. And that was like, what do you mean? And so I was totally at a loss. And that was when we basically lost. She wasn't going. There was that was when I realized I can't do anything. I can't control her. And then that set me back in the depression. And that's whenever the Christian counselor, as wonderful as he helped me a lot, I knew I needed I needed something else. It set me, I was like 5 steps forward. That was 10 steps back.
Right.
So that's whenever I went to see a psychiatrist to get on some medication. And he truly diagnosed me with situational depression. He said, you've had a traumatic experience. It's basically like it was the death of a daughter. It was, and I thank God every day that, she is still alive, but I for 2 years, I was just curled up in a ball, and that's whenever, yeah.
Yeah, and so she made that decision, you guys didn't. However, you had to, as parents, allow it, but also step in, and you had to have her evicted from the apartment that you had just paid for or been a co-signer on or whatever.
Yep.
And what else did you guys have to do for tough love at that
took
moment?
away her phone. She didn't have a job. She didn't have any money at all. She literally had, her clothes, and all the furniture was being delivered. I canceled the furniture order and said, come home when you're ready. You're always welcome to come home. We welcome you. We wanted her home. That was the only way to really protect her. And she didn't come home for 2 years.
Wow.
But it made her stronger. She worked 3 jobs, and she wasn't in school, and she realized it's a lot of work, and she was still enjoying partying. And I just think she just had to figure it out on her own.
Right. And now she's been sober for how long?
Yep. She turns 29 years old. And Valerie, I should have asked you about telling all this before. I didn't know I was going to tell all the gory details, but she turns 29 in February, and I couldn't be more proud of who she is now.
Yeah. That's amazing. Valerie, if you are watching this, you're an amazing woman who has so much courage to step out and do what you've done.
Right.
And to allow your story to be told, because so many people can heal from that. And that's just the vulnerability of all of us. When we have that type of vulnerability, to be able to talk about our stories.
Very true.
It's not only healing for us, but a healing for the woman on the other side of the screen, or to know that whoever's watching has a resource now that they can talk to or reach out to and say, hey, I'm going through the same thing.
Absolutely.
Where could you point me? Which direction can I go? I just appreciate, Valerie, allowing your mom to tell this story. And let's bring it around to that day that she either called or showed up at your doorstep. What was that like for you guys?
Well, I always, now we've had some good discussions, and I've asked her, so are you glad you went to rehab? Did it really even help at all? And she said, no, it really did, plant some seeds. And she realized, here she was at 19 with 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old women who'd lost everything. And just hearing their stories just made her realize, well, I don't want to be like that. But, it's still, she was in college, and it's just the culture. And I just think, the drinking and, and maybe for me going back to school, I learned, the difference between, psychological addiction versus physiological addiction. And there's just so many different avenues. And then just at what point, it overcomes you, and where you just feel like you need it. And it's a shame our culture has evolved into that. Why is it totally acceptable to always drink. I mean, alcohol's poison.
Mhm.
It really is. It's like, well, why are you drinking that when there's nothing good about it?
Right.
You know, and nothing good happens past midnight, and nothing good happens after 2 drinks.
Mhm.
You know, if you can't limit yourself to 2, it's just, but it's the same. You know, that's a whole other podcast about the whole addiction and recovery, no matter what it is. You know, like I was telling you about sugar.
Well, and I remember I was recently at Daybreak for a graduation ceremony that they do, and you can talk a little bit about that. But I think these girls who are that young, or men too, have such a uphill battle against society in general. They've been in recovery for however many days they're there, and they get out and they have every hope to stay that way. Yet society smacks them in the face with potentially not a home to live in for these girls at Daybreak, going home to an environment where there's alcohol and drugs still in their environment.
Right.
And even if they don't have that in their immediate environment, society as a whole says, oh, it's okay to drink, it's okay to smoke marijuana. And they want to live their childhood out in those ways that's normal, right?
And it's legal.
Right.
Yeah,
that's got to be so hard for young people
navigate.
who still want to say, oh, I want to have that like experience of college, and everyone's doing it, so why shouldn't I?
Right. It's hard to be the strong one to say, you know, no, it's not my cup of tea.
Very hard at that age.
And you know what? That's the one thing I'm going to put a little kudos in for my son. He watched this. He's 20 years old and never had a drink of alcohol, sip of alcohol, just has no desire. He's one of those that's strong enough, and he's at a party school. He's known for a party reputation. He's a Coug, go Cougs. But it's prevalent, you know, there. Most college towns are. And he just, you know, has been uninvolved in that. And I want to, another thing to thank my daughter for, you know, he saw what it did to her and just wants no part of it. So, but back to your question, back to when she and her boyfriend broke up. So that was when she reached out. When I think, you know, she literally hit rock bottom because she didn't have a place to live. And I think it took a lot of courage for her to do that. But on the other hand, you know, I give her kudos for 2 years. I thought it would be a month. You know, I thought she would be calling, wanting to come home in a month or 2. And it was literally close to 2 years before she was like, okay, I'm ready to go back to school. Realizing that was, and I was like, well, are you going to be able to get accepted to school, you know? And she applied back to Colorado, CU Boulder. She had to go in front of a panel to explain, you know, what's happened. I mean, the blessing was she still was a decent student. She still had good grades, even though she was kicked out of 2 schools, literally. Well, she had to withdraw from CSU because she went to rehab. And so she explained, I went to rehab and, you know, I still had to find myself and figure it out, but will you guys please take me back? And so she went in front of a panel of 10 people. They accepted her back on probation. And so she fulfilled her duties and she graduated with honors with a degree in biology. And, you know,
is that the picture on that we'll use for the promotion?
That was
that graduation?
I think she graduated at age 25. And that makes sense. And then she got into veterinary school, and which is very difficult. And her grades weren't, I mean, you need a 4.0 to get into vet school. I mean, she had like a 3.3, you know, because she had some withdrawals, and I think she had 1 F. They couldn't anyway. So, but she had a 4.0 in all of her biology classes, so that made her desirable for a vet school. And she got an interview, and I remember she called me and said, should I be honest about what's happened? And I was like, you know, I don't know the answer to that. Part of me was like, yeah, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. And it was a God thing, because whoever interviewed her understood her stuff. She was completely honest. They connected, and he took a chance on her.
Oh, yeah. Where does she go to school?
So she's at Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine. It's in the Caribbean. I know, right? Well, they're kind of known for taking chances on. You don't have to have a 4.0 to get into. They look at the broader range, and it's quote known to be a little easier to get into. But Ross is smart because they accept everyone, but then like 60 people didn't make it after the first semester. So they get all the money, they get your tuition, and then it's like a sink or swim. And so she thrived on it. So she was like, I'm swimming and going to be at the top of my class. And right now, I just seriously got a text from her. She's in the middle of finals. She'll be home in 2 weeks. She is number 1 in her class. I know.
That's such a cool story.
I love it.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh, it's a long road. So it was a long road.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable through it. I know it was.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit, let's keep going.
Okay.
I want to talk about Daybreak a little bit more. So how can people support them? And can you tell a little bit more about Daybreak and the Royal Closet?
Oh, yeah, right. Of course. That's right. Good job remembering those two. Yeah, no, so Daybreak is for girls 12 to 18, and we do have the boys who are in the other facility down in Vancouver. So I've been there for 3.5 years, and it's girls 12 to 18, and we have the ENT side as well for the evaluation and treatment, and those are the girls with mental health issues. And a lot of times they're co-occurring. Obviously they're masking their mental health with addiction, but not always. A lot of times these girls will come with acute crises mode or self-harming of attempted suicide and a lot of other issues. And because we're not a detox facility. So the girls will come into the ENT side and then we'll get their mental health issues stable, and then they can move over to the chemical dependency side. And then we'll work with, and they get to continue with the same counselor, which is what's the beauty of Daybreak. So it's all under one roof. But no, Daybreak, we service the whole area. We have clients from Idaho and Oregon, and it's been around for 43 years now. So yeah. And then the Royal Closet, that I've got to give Spring Goody kudos. She's the founder of the Royal Closet, and realized it was just more than she could handle, working full time. And Daybreak was her biggest client, per se, for all the girls to come and do their little prom. We do the 3 dances a year, and the girls they got to go shopping and pick out a beautiful dress and just feel like a princess for a day. And the Spokane Community College cosmetology students come in and do all their hair and makeup, and a professional photographer comes in and does their portraits. And so it's a great experience. And the Royal Closet is actually not just for Daybreak. It's for the community at large. And that's where Jolene is helping on the committee, and your daughter, Allie. And kudos to you for being such a phenomenal mom and getting Allie involved with, our community with Project Beauty Share and, and now the Royal Closet and Daybreak, and just to realize, it's not it's hard at that age because you're just very self-centered,
right?
At those young, seriously, from age 15 to 25, it's the life revolves around, this is it. It's hard to see outside of that.
Yes.
So
I can't tell you how many times I talk to my children or my son on the phone, and it's all about, how is it going for you? And then never a question, oh, well, how are you? And what's going on in your life? Like always one-sided.
Yeah.
But that will change someday.
It does.
Yeah.
And that changed with Valerie. Like literally it was like age 25, 26. When she graduated CU Boulder, she realized, wow, okay, there's more to this world than just this little tiny bubble.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
yeah.
Well, I want to put a plug in for Make May Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So that is May 9th.
Yep.
And it is here in Spokane. It is going, the Royal Closet is going to be basically showcasing a lot of their dresses. And we are on the board of directors for that. Of course you are, because you work for Daybreak. But Daybreak Youth Services is doing this big event to raise money for the Life Enrichment programs.
Exactly.
And the Life Enrichment programs, in fact, Monica Reed, who commented here, is one of those Life Enrichment program facilitators. She owns Barbell.
To give Monica a plug.
Yeah, Barbell Fitness Studio and in Liberty Lake and here in the Spokane Valley. And she has the Daybreak girls come and they take bar classes.
And they love it.
Yeah.
They go like twice a month, and Monica and Jen Smitham, who's also now on the committee, she couldn't make the meeting. They teach the lessons. And yeah, the Life Enrichment program is instrumental with Daybreak because I think you've heard the success rate. There's a difference between completion rate and success rate. We're starting to monitor success rate. What you consider success is, does that mean 90 days sober? Does that mean a year sober? Is it 5 years sober? I mean, when you're tracking 12-year-old little girls, it's hard to what success means at that age. But completion rate, since the Life Enrichment program was implemented, our completion rate at Daybreak 4 years ago was 82%, basically a B minus. It is an A plus rating right now. It's 97, 98% completion rate.
Yeah.
Kudos
to you for going
the Life Enrichment. Yeah.
And all your team too. But
yeah,
what you guys have done with the dances that you put on and how you take the girls out of the facility. If you guys get a chance, come visit the facility. You'll see what we're talking about. Getting out of that facility into life and knowing that you can do life and what is out there.
Experiences that they wouldn't have otherwise experienced.
Yeah, they don't get to have prom or homecoming if they're in a facility like that. And even if they were not in that facility, would they be able to afford a dress or have the ability to go? And so the Royal Closet does allow anyone in the Spokane community to come get a dress for free for any event coming up, even for women our age.
I was at the fur ball. There was, for the Humane Society, people came in and borrowed dresses, which was really nice.
That's great.
So giving.
I'm totally doing that.
May 9th, it's brunch. We're doing May 10th Sunday is Mother's Day. So May 9th is our Make May Amazing. It is a brunch, so it's early in the morning. I'm at Northern Quest Casino, so be on the lookout for more info in 2020.
Mom, you need to come. You're still watching.
I know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.